Welcome to The Concise Consultant. This series of short lecturettes covers some of the main skills needed to work effectively as a management consultant. Hello, my name is Calvert Markham. I'm a management consultant, but for much of my career I've designed and delivered training and consulting skills for individuals and organizations around the world. As part of this work, some years ago I recorded a series of interviews with the broadcaster Michael Bartlett on various topics in consultancy. We called it The Concise Consultant. I've now added some graphics to these interviews. We cover 4 topics. Consultancy and dealing with clients, in which we look at the context in which consultancy is performed. How to deliver consultancy services, which is at the core of a consultant's work. Selling consultancy services, which is essential for anyone working in a consulting practice. And managing the consultancy business, which looks at some of the peculiar challenges involved. This is the first of the series and deals with consultancy and dealing with clients. Professional or technical expertise alone is not sufficient to be successful as a consultant. Excellent consulting projects depend on consultants getting the best from their clients. Managing the client relationship is therefore at the core of consulting effectiveness. I hope you enjoy this lecturette and find it useful. Now over to Michael Bartlett.
Calvert, let's be conventional and start at the beginning. What is consultancy?
Well, I have my own particular definition, which is delivering specialist skills in a client environment. Now, of course, there are lots of people who have specialist skills, and they then start to offer them to people in another organisation. That means that they start getting involved in consultancy. So it's a very broad definition. And under this heading, you might put people like lawyers, corporate financiers, accountants, and other professionals. And so in a broad sense, all these people are consultants. Now, in fact, in our definition, we don't really distinguish between the specialist skills that people have. What we do distinguish between is the type of organisation that they are working in. And we identify 3 main types of organisation that provide consultancy. There's the first mainstream type of consultancy, which is something you might call a management consultancy, the organisations that you recognise as being management consultancies. Then there are internal consultants, and I'll be saying a bit more about them later. And then there's a third and very interesting category, which we call emergent consultants. And these are organisations which don't have consultancy as a mainstream to their business, but they offer it in conjunction with perhaps other products to offer some sort of competitive advantage, why people should use their products, or maybe just to generate a revenue stream in its own right.
So why do organisations use consultants?
Well, for internal consultants, I think there's a particular reason, and that's because an organisation may want to develop its own special centres of excellence in a particular area of specialisation. But for organisations that are buying in consultancy, I think that it's a broad area of the make or buy decision. Do we actually do something ourselves, or do we get someone in to do it? And there may be a number of reasons why organisations get someone in to do it. One of those might be because they don't have the people who can do it internally, or they do have the people who can do it internally, but they're fully engaged in doing other things. They may have only a temporary need for specialist help, in which case they only want to take on someone on a short-term basis, and consultants can be engaged on that basis. They may want to have some technology transfer. In other words, what's happening is they don't know how to do something, and they're looking to an outsider to provide that. Or finally, they are looking for someone who's independent, who can give an objective view, or indeed can reduce the risk or increase their sense of security in taking a particular decision.
You mentioned just now specialist skills, but you seem to be implying that consultancy skills are something different.
Yes, I think they are, because even though you have specialist skills, what you really need to have is consultancy skills, because they make a difference whether you win business, giving good value to your client, and so on. And if you think about what the nature of consultancy skills are, they're peculiarly related to working outside an organisation. I may have specialist skills, but be employed in a line job. As a consultant, I'm actually working outside the organisation I'm advising.
Now, I know that in this section you particularly want to think about the consultant-client relationship, but why should this be a problem?
Well, it's not just about interpersonal relationships, although people often confuse client relationships with that. Of course, you'd expect consultants to have a good personal relationship with the people with whom they work. But there is a problem, really, in the professional firm, and that's because there is a conflict of objectives that naturally occurs between the needs of the practice and the needs of a client. So, for example, a practice may want to maximise the amount of money it gets from a client, whilst at the same time the client wants to get the service for as cheap a price as it can possibly pay. So there's an inherent conflict there. But when one looks at the real reasons for dissatisfaction amongst clients, I think there are three main ones that stand out. The first is that the consultant has done a poor job technically, and in my experience that very rarely happens. On the whole, consultants do pretty good jobs. The second is that the project was ill-conceived in the first place, and that probably is a mix of responsibility between the consultant and the client. But thirdly, and I think the most significant element, is that there's a mismatch of expectations between what the client thought they were going to get and what they actually did get. This last one is the most important. Now, we're going to be talking about setting formal expectations when we come to the topic of terms of reference, which I'm going to be discussing under the heading of selling consultancy services. But equally important are the informal expectations, what colleagues of mine once called the unwritten expectations of the client. And these broadly boil down to how do I behave on the client site? What am I meant to be doing whilst I'm here? For example, a very simple example is, do we address people by their Christian names or not? Do we dress formally? Can I go and talk to people in other departments without seeking the authority of the line manager in the department with which I'm working? And so on.
Can you give me an example of how the consultant-client relationship might break down?
Well, unfortunately, I can, from my own personal experience, but happily there's some time in the past, and I just think about two things which are around the subject of expectations. I can remember one client who got frightfully annoyed because he was expecting a long report from me and I only gave him a short one, and another one where there was a group of senior managers who I got together for a workshop, and they didn't really want to be there at all and didn't really have any support for the project at all.
But surely in that last instance, the problem was the clients.
Yes, it was, but it is the job of a consultant to help a client be a good client. If you think about it, consultants spend a lot more of their time working with clients than clients spend working with consultants. The balance of expertise is in the favour of the consultant, and so it's the consultant's job to make sure that things go right.
Calvert, all this does seem a little bit negative. What can you do positively to create delighted clients?
I think the first thing is to remember there's no such thing as a consultancy project, although we will be talking about that later on in this interview. All projects really are client projects. The client actually owns those projects, and the consultant simply helping the client conduct their own project. It's important, therefore, that the client keeps that ownership. The second thing is to keep the client in the picture. You've got to communicate well. And as part of that also, you've got to listen. And my belief is follow your gut feeling. If you don't think things are going particularly well, then you really need to think, why is that, and what do I need to put that right? And when problems arise, which you can't sort out by yourself, and which you need some client's help, do seek that help out. Bear in mind that there are many situations where consultants have said, do you know, after that problem, we had a lot better relationship with the client after we successfully solved it than beforehand. Overall, I'd say it's important to build confidence between yourself and the client. Remember that clients are answerable internally, and you need to give them help to make sure that they're seen to be doing a good job with you.
That completes this session on consultancy and dealing with clients. Here's what we covered. What is consultancy and who provides it? Why do organizations use consultants? What skills are needed in consulting? The client-consultant relationship and reasons for client dissatisfaction. How the consultant-client relationship can break down. What can you do to create delighted clients? In this short session, we have only touched on these topics. If you want to know more, you may like to take a look at some of my other publications, or at further training. I'll be giving details on each of these in a moment, but as you might expect, all are relevant to consultancy and dealing with clients. Practical management consultancy should be really helpful to those who are recent recruits to management consultancy as well as a useful refresher to more experienced consultants who want to revisit the basics. The core of the book is a detailed treatment of the consultancy delivery process, which I have called the consult process, and which consists of 5 stages. Entry, in which you establish a relationship with a client. Contracting, agreeing what you're going to do and how you do it. Diagnosis, in which you gather information and work out how the client's situation is to be addressed. Intervention, where you work with the client to put your solutions in place, and closure, completion of the project and withdrawal. This is supported by chapters on the supporting techniques that consultants need in their tool bag, for example, report writing and problem solving. Finally, there are chapters on contextual matters, commercial aspects, and working in a consulting practice. The top consultant addresses the skills required of more experienced management consultants and has a more commercial edge than practical management consultancy, covering, for example, managing a consultancy business, product definition and marketing in consultancy, the consultancy sales process, consultancy problem solving, and commercial aspects of consultancy. Joe Omani wrote the first edition of Management Consultancy in 2010. Over the many years I've been teaching consultants and students, this is by far the best critical examination of management consultancy and the various aspects of it. It is a truly excellent book for students of the subject. I therefore had no hesitation in making this the set book for the courses I've run at MSc and MBA levels. I was therefore delighted when Joe asked me to contribute to the second edition in 2013. I added only a little to what was already a very comprehensive book, but Joe's been kind enough to cite me as the second author. There are 4 perspectives covered in the book. Descriptive, outlining what consultancy is and its business. Practitioner, setting out the practicalities of delivering consultancy and the commercial aspects of it. Critical, setting out the challenges for institutions and individuals in consultancy. And career, which is of interest to the many students who are considering the possibility of becoming a management consultant. All these books are available on Amazon. In a different medium, you may like to take a look at Henry Stewart Talks, which are in a format similar to the one you've just seen. The series on management consultancy contains a number of lectures by academics on contemporary issues. I've contributed one on the consulting project cycle. Finally, there are lots of training courses available for consultants, and so it'd be remiss of me not to refer you to those run by the company that I founded, now called Elevation Learning. Their suite of courses includes core skill programs, covering the essential skills needed in any consultancy business, in-depth skills for consultants going beyond the core skills, developing competence in aspects of the consulting process, working with clients, and commercial skills. And finally, managers may find themselves thrust into a consulting role as internal consultants, or technical specialists such as engineers may need consulting skills to work effectively with clients. Internal service deliverers such as HR and IT need these skills if they are to provide excellent service to their in-house clients. Courses in engagement skills for technical specialists and internal consultants will help them to perform well in all these roles. You can see all these courses and others on the Elevation Learning website. There are, of course, many other resources available to both beginners in consultancy and experienced practitioners. Thank you for your attention.